Hello everyone and welcome to the English Tutor channel. In this video, we are going to talk about the books that are extremely necessary for participating and cracking the UGC NET JRF examination. You may feel that this video is a repetition of all the videos that you have seen around YouTube, talking about the important books unit-wise or talking about the books according to themes and genres. But stick around and you'll find that this video is a tad bit different from those other videos because here in the English Tutor channel, we are going to discuss in a crisp yet voluminous manner how these books are good and how you can utilize these books. We have used these books to a certain extent while preparing for examinations, while or reading them for pleasure. So we know a bit about these few books, and we will only talk about those books which we have experienced firsthand. And along with that, we are also going to discuss the various features, the pros and cons of these books. So without further ado, let's begin the video. First, let us look at the syllabus of UGC NET. So as you can see, the syllabus of English literature for UGC NET is divided into 10 units. Unit 1 to 4 are units that particularly focus on literature or the literary genres. Unit 1 is drama, Unit 2 poetry, Unit 3 fiction short story, and Unit 4 non-fictional prose. So these four units amalgamate or encompass the entire gamut of literature, tracing from the earliest times to the most present times. And the note at the end of Unit 4 suggests that these four units will not only comprise of the canonical literature, the conventional literature of British English, but will also include literatures of all countries and languages, and also the works translated in English in the world. So these four units become the foundational course of this foundational feature, not course, sorry, foundational feature of the syllabus. Next, after that, we have Unit 5 called Language, Basic Concepts, Theories and Pedagogy, English in Use. Now, in this unit, we are talking about the English language. The English language, its origins, its ideas of origins, the various theories associated with it, and the way English is taught in various countries. So, these are the basic things that this unit deals with. Next is Unit 6, English in India, History, Evolution and Futures. Now in this unit, we are talking about the development and influence of the English language as well as literature in the Indian subcontinent as a whole. We're going to trace the ideas of English in India, how it arrived in India, how it developed in India, and what are the nuances or what are the influences that it has upon the country as a whole, and what will be the futures, what are the next things in coming for English in India. After that, we have possibly the most unique yet complicated unit of all, that is Unit 7, called Cultural Studies. Now, Cultural Studies is not a particular discipline. It's an amalgamation of many disciplines. It's an interdisciplinary approach to be said. So, it comprises literature, other subjects of humanities, the social sciences, and the pure sciences all together in order to create this kind of an approach. So particularly in this unit, we will see how literary texts and literary phenomena are interpreted via cultural studies, and what kind of influence cultural studies has on literary research and literary studies. After that, we have Unit 8 and 9. So Unit 8 is literary criticism and Unit 9 is literary theory. So these two units are more or less chronological in manner. So in Unit 8 we have literary criticism, that is particular criticisms of particular critics and authors, their personal opinions on literature, or how they view literature. So in Western culture, the first instance of criticism starts from Plato and Aristotle, from their Republic and Poetics respectively, up till the earlier part of the 20th century to T.S. Eliot, F.R. Leavis, and I.A. Richards, to say the least. So in Unit 8, we are going to deal with all these particular authors, all these phenomenal critics, and what are their opinions about literature through their books and through their works. And in Unit 9, after that, so Unit 9 suggests that at the middle of the 20th century, that is after the Second World War, there was a shift from particular personal criticism to a school of thought or to a methodical approach to criticizing literature or appreciating literature. And this kind of a shift was called the shift to theory. So literary theory, in contrast to literary criticism, is not very personal, but they acquire or try to formulate a set of beliefs and set of ideas or set of concepts which help us in interpreting and appreciating literature. So there are many important schools of literary theory like structuralism, post-structuralism, feminism, Marxism, etc., as well as cultural phenomena like postmodernism, modernism, post-colonialism, and also the new approaches to theory like eco-criticism and post-humanism, etc. So this unit, the unit 9, will deal with these kind of things. And finally, in unit 10, we get research methods and materials in English. So this is also a new unit and a very unique one at that. So in this unit, the the unit hints that we have to deal with the kind of research that English literature offers, as well as the methods and materials, the tools that is that is utilized in proceeding with with the research in literature in English, and how literary research is different from other forms of research, especially in the social sciences and in humanities. So these are the very basic few conceptual things that we have to learn in Unit 10. So this was the syllabus. Now, first of all, we will discuss the books that are necessary for understanding the first 4 units of English literature. So as you know that these 4 units, as we have already said, that these 4 units actually encompass the entire gamut of literature. So we have a wide range of books that we need to read in order to understand that. So for your convenience, we have divided the list of books into 5 categories or 5 sections. So the first section is British literature. You know, the basic idea of literature that happened in England and that influenced the entire world. So in British literature, you have to basically read 3 books. There are many books, many other books apart from these 3, but it is suggested that if you read these 3 books in a good manner or in with perfect concentration and enthusiasm, it will suffice. So the first book that is on the left, this one, is called English Literature, Its History and Its Significance for the Life of the English-Speaking World by William J. Long. This book is a dated book, it's outdated, but still it has good information about the literature, the biographical information of authors, as well as their works up until the Victorian era. So, and the most important thing about this book is that it is written in a manner which tells you a story. So if you don't understand English literature, or you have no prior knowledge about English literature, it is suggested that you read this book and you will more or less fall in love with the subject. Although there are many criticisms to this book, but leaving these criticisms aside, this book is very beginner friendly and has ample information about the authors and their works up until the Victorian age. Now, to complement this book and to have a very updated version of the up-to-date version of the history of English literature, we have this one, the Routledge History of Literature in English, written by or collaboratively or a collab between 2 authors, that is Ronald Carter and John McCrae. This book is a very up-to-date book and possibly the most up-to-date book that is available in the market. This book not only covers the origin of English literature but also has great essays and great topics about the 21st century English literature, talking about the post-war literature of England as well as the post 9/11 literatures of England. So Anything that you can't get in William J. Long, you will get more than enough in the Routledge History of English Literature. There are two more books which are quite up to date. One is uh, Andrew Sanders' The Oxford Short Oxford History of English Literature, but that book is a bit more problematic and bit more jargonic in nature. And the other one is Michael Alexander's A History of English Literature, published by Palgrave Macmillan. That book is a costly book and does not include all the necessary information that is necessary that you require about the contemporary literary scene. So the Routledge History of English Literature will be the best source for using or best source for getting the up-to-date information about the new topics or the new scenario in literature. Now, after talking about these two books, we have finally a good reference book called History of English Literature by Edward Albert, published by Oxford. So this book is not very lucid like William J. Long's, not very up to date like the Routledge History, but this book is a very good book for quick references. It has chronological dates, it's very chronologically written, it has chronological dates, it has a list of authors, list of developments of the age, and list of most important literary forms or literary expulsions of that age. So after you have read these two books, you can help yourself with this one for a quick reference. Now, after British literature, we should focus on American literature. So, for American literature, the first book that has to be suggested is Malcolm Bradbury's From Puritanism to Postmodernism. The full title of the book is From Puritanism to Postmodernism, A History of American Literature. So, as the title of the book suggests, uh, this book deals with American literature from the age of Puritanism, as American English literature started during the Puritan age when many European people, especially from people from England, emigrated to the new world that was America, to the postmodern age. So this book, the problem with this book is that it does not deal with the indigenous literatures or African American literature to a whole, but still, this book gives us a very good idea about the conventional literature of America, and even talks about the issues of notions of literature that we find in this particular region of America, in the particular regions of America. So this book is a good starting point. The book is quite a bit costly, but you will find that even though it's a bit costly, you will find that this book does its work well. Now, for the go-to book that you should read for American literature is Richard Gray's A History of American Literature. This is a voluminous book, an exhaustive book. It has like 900 pages. I don't know about the new edition, but the edition that we used had 900 pages. So it chronologically deals with American European literature, the American English literature, the indigenous literatures of the American people like the Inca, Maya, Aztecs, their oral literature, their folklores, and also African American literature. And this book also contains very good synopsis of all the important works that we can get in American literature. So this book is a must-have for anybody has who tries to understand American literature in a good way. And finally, American Literature by Nandana Datta is also quite a very famous book that one should read in order to get a good grasp of American literature. This is also a sort of a reference book. It's part of Orient Black Swan's literary context series, and it is edited by Pramod Nair. So this book not only deals with American literature but also timestamps and gives an idea of how such kind of literatures developed, and it clarifies the conception about the contexts of all those kinds of literatures. So this is a very good and a handy book for American literature. And many universities and colleges of India actually suggest this book to beginners who want to study American literature. Next up, we have Indian literatures in English. So we also have three books here. The first one that you should read or should get a hold of is Indian Writings in English by K.R.S. Iyengar. So this book is called the Holy Grail or the starting point of a history of English literature. Before Iyengar, nobody had written a sequential and chronologically sustainable history of Indian English writings. He was the first one to do so, and this was a very good opportunity for Iyengar to posit and give out all the necessary information that he had about the Indian writings that was published or that was written in English. So you will get a good amount of information about the initial starting point of English in India, as well as how Indian English literature developed up until the 1980s. But this book, as being the first one to cover the topic of Indian writings in English, has become quite dated. It has not aged well, so you won't find any contemporary information in this book. So, for a reference to the earlier origin of Indian English literature up to the 1980s, you can go for this book. Next up is the most canonical book for the history of Indian English literature, that is M.K. Naik's book, A History of English Literature. The book actually talks about, which is missing in Iyengar's book, is that it talks about the themes, genres, and movements that happened in India in a lucid and exhaustive manner. Other than that, it also has the contents of the book also demarcates the different kinds of literatures. So there's a demarcation between poetry, there's a demarcation between fiction, there's a demarcation between prose. So it helps students to navigate the literatures and developments of the between the centuries a little more better than Iyengar's book can. But still, and this book is a bit more updated, but still it's also dated to a certain extent, so you will find the necessary information that you want up till the 2000s. Now, in order to suffice the latest contexts and latest developments in Indian English literature, we have only one book that is authentic in nature, that is called A Concise History of Indian Literatures in English, edited by Arvind Krishna Mehrotra. So this is not a book that is entirely written by Malhotra. It is a collection of essays, though, and these collection of essays are chronologically maintained about the different developments of Indian English literature. And you will find that this book is quite updated and has topics and has chapters on Indian writings, Indian translation writings, as well as 21st century developments in drama and fiction. There's a similar book written by Mehrotra. It's called An Illustrated History of Literature, Indian Literature in English. You don't have to buy that. It's a costly book, and moreover, the contents are the same. But in the concise edition of this book, with this title that you can see on the visual, is that this book has updated content on Indian translation writings and etc. So go for this book. And this is a personal opinion, is that if any student wants to get a good grasp of Indian English literature, that student must cross read in a cross referencing manner all the three books, and only after reading all the three books in a cross referencing manner that the person can actually call himself or else herself a good have can call himself or herself as having a good knowledge about Indian writings in English. So go for these three books. Next, after that, in the fourth section, we are going to talk about literary studies introductions. So what happens is that in reading the histories of literatures and reading much more complicated books about other things and subjects, we tend to lose focus about the introductory or the basic ideas of literatures that we have, the basic notions of literatures, the genres, the movements, the devices that are important in the making of literature. We tend to forget these things. And these things actually come in the NET examination, the very basic seminal concepts regarding literature. So, in order to get a good grasp and understanding of all these seminal ideas, the student should go for these three books. The best book to start off is by B. Prasad. The book is called A Background to the Study of English Literature. It has it has described all the necessary genres of poetry, prose, short story, novel, as well as other kind of fiction, drama. And in this book, for example, in the poetry section, it not only defines poetry, but also defines the different forms and genres of poetry, like the ode, the ballad, the sonnet, the narrative forms of poetry, the lyrical forms of poetry, etc., in a detailed manner, with significant, absolutely necessary examples from true literary, and I'm using the term true in a very loose form, in a true literary works. For example, from Keats's work and from Kamala Das's works, in order to better situate his points. So this book is a must for a beginner of English literature and also for a person who tries to understand the basic concepts of English literature in a much more better manner. After one is done with B. Prasad, that person should next read William Henry Hudson's book, An Introduction to the Study of Literature. This book does the same work as Prasad's book, but also introduces and defines some more complicated terms and devices used in literature. For example, free text pyramids, to say one, and these these few devices that these few devices are quite necessary in understanding the complicated contours of literature and complicated contours of the world of the sorry, I'm just stuttering a bit, don't mind. So these words, like these devices like free text pyramids or the dramatic monologue, these words are quite well established in this text, in this book, and a hefty reading of this book will lead to a better understanding for the students. And finally, this Bloomsbury Guide to Studying Literature is a must-have for any student because this book not only deals with the various genres, themes, movements, and forms of literature that we have already talked about, but it also has a section called Literary Theory. It discusses in a very lucid manner, in a very pointed manner, very crisp manner, what literary theories are important for literature and how we should utilize these theories in interpreting texts. So this book is a very contemporary, very modern book, very up-to-date book, and this book actually deals with how we should use theory in interpreting the texts or literary works that we are reading. So this book is also a must-have for literature students. Next, finally, the last section for Unit 1 to 4 is literary dictionaries. So we all know that in this day and age we have Google with us, but still these few books are necessary for students who are very serious about studying literature. That's because we sometimes feel that the information that we get in the internet is quite contradictory. So in order to get authenticated and established works, established ideas of how what these terms or those terms actually mean, we should have these books. So the best book for literary terms is obviously M.H. Abraham's The Glossary of Literary Terms. It has almost all the important terms that you can think about in understanding literature. From the NET point of view, many students have already seen that there are many important terms like cacophony, or sometimes there is abject or aporia. These are few complicated terms that we don't actually know about. So if we have a good reading of this book, which is alphabetical in a manner, so it has A to Z, uh, it has positioned in A to Z manner all these entries. We'll find that this book actually helps us in understanding those complicated terms in a very well manner. Now, uh, after one has actually gone through the glossary of literary terms, then that person can go through the Penguin Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory. This book is more or less the same, but it also contains many terms that are missing in Abraham's Glossary of Literary Terms. So a cross-referencing of the two is also necessary in order to get a good grasp of all the important literary terms that are available in English literature. And finally, this book called the Oxford Companion to English Literature is called the Holy Grail. Is I cannot emphasize enough that this book is very important for a student of English literature. If you want to get this book is quite costly. It costs around 2000 rupees in Indian currency. So if you want to get this book, get the 7th edition by Diana Birch, and this book will help you greatly. So it's not like the glossary of literary terms like Abrams or the Cruden's Penguin Dictionary. It has almost all the reference ideas, all the references that one should need in order to get a quick glance of literature. It has entries on literary terms, literary movements, literary authors, literary works, and the synopsis that it gives for many important works are just the best synopsis that you can get with money. So this book is a go-to book for any student of literature. It not only deals with English literature, but also it includes Indian English literature, Caribbean literature, American literature, and everything, all the important works that you can name. So if you're looking for example, the Scarlet Letter, this book has it. If you're looking for Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie, this book has it. So it is a go-to reference book for everything, every literary work, or almost every literary work that you can find. So if you can buy this book, if you have the capability to buy this book, go for this book. You will not regret it. And even if you want to become a professor or a teacher in English literature, this book is a must have for you. So please do go for this book. So with these five sections, we are ending our suggestions for the unit 1 to 4. Next, we'll get to unit 5, that is English language. So again, for unit 5, English language, we are demarcating the demarcating three sections which deal with three types of books, three sections of books. So in talking about language, we first need to deal with the history of English language. For this, two books will suffice. The first one is an outline history of English literature, that is by Frederick T. Wood, published by Trinity as of now. So this book is a very simple book to understand, and it has, in a very plain manner, demarcated the various developments of English, from the origin of English to the Renaissance development, to the Celtic influences, to the Latin influences to literature, how vocabulary has changed, how meanings have developed. These are the few units that this book covers, and how English has, from the old age, has come to what the kind of English that we all know and write or read as of now. So this is a very unique book and a very good book for beginners who are trying to understand the English language, development of the English language. Apart from that, a consolidated and a, what should I say, seminal book for understanding the history of English language is Albert C. Bowes' this book, A History of English Language. Compared to the other one, this book is quite exhaustive. It has many chapters and has a lot of detailed information about how language, English language developed, how the shifts happened, which word has shifted to which language, which particular meaning has changed towards. So it has a lot of new developments, and if you buy the sixth edition, you will get an idea of how English literature turned global and what are the repercussions of the English language turning global, which is not available in any other book of English language. So if you have to go for these two books, go for these two books, and these few books will be necessary for the exam as well. Now, after we get a good example or good idea of the history of English language, we should go for ELT, English language teaching. So if you remember the syllabus, has English in use and also the idea of pedagogy. So pedagogy basically means the idea of teaching or learning a language as something as second language or a first language. So in order to understand the idea of teaching English or learning English, these two books are seminal, and these two books are actually indispensable for these things. So when you talk about books, and when you talk about books like, for example, when you talk about ELT theories, English language teaching theories like Disaggestopedia, the direct method, indirect method, comprehension method, all these methods are actually defined in this book by Diane Larson, Freeman, and Marty Anderson. Teach techniques and principles in English in language teaching. So without this book, all these references and all these chronological references to how English should be taught will not be there. So this book also has very good examples, classroom case studies, as well as examples that make our understanding of all these ideas, all these concepts and methods of ELT better. Now, if we can finish up this book, Oxford book, then we should go to this book as well, called Approaches and Methods in Language Teaching by Richards and Rogers. This book is a bit more complicated than the earlier book, but this book, apart from giving us new examples and new outlooks into the language teaching method, it also talks to us or tells us about how this language teaching process started and how it has developed in various countries, and what are the methods and what are the opportunities and approaches that the different countries in the world, especially third world countries, take towards English language in order to incorporate in their syllabus or in their country the English language. What are the methods they are taking? So this book is also a go-to book for literature. But if you can't afford, I mean, if you can't, it's not. I'm not saying that you cannot buy this book. I'm saying if you can't afford to read this book right now, at least go through Larson Freeman and Anderson's book called Techniques and Principles of Linguistics. Next, and the third section is are three books that are to be lightly gone through. This is the linguistics section of the book. If you know about the last few question papers, or you have actually seen the last few question papers of NTA UGC NET English Literature, you'll find that there are at least 3 to 4 questions from linguistics. So in order to deal with these questions, these the basic books will be enough. So the first one is Linguistics, an introduction to language and communication. It is authored by 4 people, and it gives the very basic ideas of literature. Not sorry, linguistics. How linguistics as a discipline developed. What are the different things? What are the different approaches to linguistics? How linguistics is used, how linguistics is used in discussing or interpreting common language as well as literary languages. So this is a very beginner friendly book for linguistics. It's a little bit big book, but still it's an easy book to read. So it has, like, for example, it's a introductory book like a history of English literature. Oh well, sorry about that. So we are talking about the books on linguistics. So the first book on linguistics, that is An Introduction to Language and Communication, as we have said earlier, this book is like an history of English literature. It deals about the development of linguistics as a discipline and as a subject, and how linguistics is done, the various theoretical approaches to linguistics, the various methods in which linguistics is utilized and used in different linguistic interpretations as well as literary interpretations. And thus this is a very basic book on linguistics. It is a bit bulky book, but still it's easy to read. Next, after that, we come to S.K. Varman and Krishnaswamy's book Modern Linguistics and Introduction. So this is a very popular book which is suggested at the beginning level in colleges and universities. So for example, if you are a beginner in linguistics, you have taken linguistics as a discipline, or even if you're studying English literature and you have an optional paper in linguistics, you will be advised to read this book. This is a very popular book for Indian universities to suggest, because this book actually deals with very important theorists like from Noam Chomsky to Randolph Quirk about how they deal with language and linguistics, and it also has excerpts from their works, from the works of these writers, and this book actually helps to introduce to the students how linguistic works. So this is a very popular, interesting book. One should give it a read at least once. And finally, as the point of linguistics is not that important from the context of literature, from even from the net point of view, one should at least go through the Oxford concise dictionary of linguistics, because it has certain important terms. As you go through and as you explore the people, you will actually realize that there are some terms that are more important than others. So one should understand those particular terms and actually memorize those terms. So these 3 books will suffice for the linguistics part of the important books for the LET syllabus. No. So with that, we are done with Unit 5. Next, we go to Unit 6. So the materials for this unit, or the books for this unit, is actually quite scarce. The only authentic book that we get for this particular unit is N. Krishnaswamy and Lalita Krishnaswamy's book, The Story of English in India. So this is the only authentic book that we can get. It discusses the development of how the English language actually entered the Indian subcontinent, how Macaulay's Minute occurred, and how it became a disciplinary subject in order to understand and in order to gain education in India via the colonial rule, and how after the colonial rule ended, how it developed and how it formed the various in intricacies and various ideas of universities, how it helped in understanding and improving upon the ideas of educational policies and university policies, college policies, school policies, and how English as a language has been taught in India. So all the authentic information that you and authentic information in a very chronological manner that you want to get is available inside this book, The Story of English in India. So this is a must-have book, and possibly the only book that you will need for Unit 6 or this particular unit. But if you want to read something more and want to explore certain more regions, you can go to the other books as well. So this one, Trading in Language, the Story of English in India. This title is more or less the same, but the introductory title is a bit different, Trading in Language. So this is a very, what should I say, this is a very uncommon book and a very hard to find book called Trading in Language by Tulsi Ram. The writer of the book is Tulsi Ram. Both the books are more or less the same, but this book, Trading in Language by Tulsi Ram, deals with the economic aspect of the influence of English language and how the English language and its development in the Indian subcontinent had an economic influence upon India. So this is a different context from the. This is a very different and unique context. So can also go for it. If you can find the book, you should definitely go for it. And finally, a book called English in India Issues and Problem, edited by Kapil Kapoor and R.S. Gupta. This book is a book again is a collection of essays by very well-known authors of the subject. And this book deals with again the advent of English in India, the developments that has happened in Indian English, how Indian English differs from the different other kinds of English of the world, and how English is taught in India, and the nuances of ELT in India, and the methods of second language acquisition in India. All of these things are dealt with in this book through various chapters, written by various masters at various important figures of the subject. So this is also a very unique book that you should read and you should have in your collection. So these are the three books that you need for Unit 6. After that, we come to the most complicated section of the complicated unit that's called cultural studies. So here we are going to suggest you four books. Two of them are introductory books and two of them are good readers. So the first introductory book that you will need is more or less a graphic novelistic book. It's called Introducing Cultural Studies, a graphic guide. The writer is called Ziauddin Sardar. So this is a small book, a very handy book. This book is written in pictures in a very comic-ish graphic novelistic style, but you will get a lot of information, load of introductory, load of seminal information that you need to get a good grasp of the subjects, culture studies, how culture studies has developed, what are the basic ideas behind culture studies, what were the influences that formed in getting culture studies, how culture studies as a discipline works, what are the positions of culture studies, and what are the areas in which culture studies occurs. So, and as it has many pictures and many, what should I say, parodic images and visuals, it will grasp the attention of any reader, and that attention will give the readers a powerful idea of how what culture studies is, and will make them remember it in a well manner. After that, you can also go for an introduction to culture studies by Pramod Nair. This book, many people say that this is the best and only book for culture studies, but that's actually not. It's a good book. I'll not say it's a bad book. It's a very good book, but still, it's a very introductory book, and it does not deal with culture studies as a whole. It The book in general deals with the various literary or cultural theories like structuralism, post-structuralism, feminism, post-colonialism, post-modernism, and how these theories influenced culture studies and how they have amalgamated together in order to create culture studies. Apart from that, this book also deals with the various areas where culture studies influences itself, or the various areas which are important for the interpretation of culture studies. But other than that, this book should be used as a secondary reference book, but not as a main book for understanding culture studies. But nonetheless, this is a very good book in what it deals with. So give it a go. Now we come to the two main books that one should read in order to prepare for UGC NET JRF. The first is The Cultural Studies Reader, edited by Simon Dury. So this is a big book and has around 50 to 60 articles written by practitioners of cultural studies. It has articles by Richard Hogarth, Raymond Williams, Stuart Hall, Gugi Wathiongo, to say the least. So it has a collection of all the important seminal essays, articles, and works that have actually made the discipline of cultural studies stand out. So it is not suggested that you read all the articles that are presented in the book, but still try to get a good blurb or good synopsis of all the articles. If you do so, you will get to understand how culture studies works, and these titles of these articles and the writers will give you a better understanding of what to read and what not to read about culture studies. So go for this book. This is a very important book that you should go to. And after that, finally, you should also read the Sage Dictionary of Cultural Studies by Chris Barker. This book is a collection of all the important terms and all the important devices that cultural studies as a discipline uses. So you get acculturation, you get structure, you get the meaning of what area means, what modernism means, you get what a community means, what subaltern means, all the important terms that is used in theory and culture studies. You get a very good example and very good definition of all the important terms that are necessary for culture studies. So for example, if you are attempting the NET JRF examination and you get particular terms that you have to explain, or particular terms that you have to mix with one another or refer to the writer, it gives the idea. And it also has many short summaries and short entries on the important writer. The Sage Dictionary also has some sections about the important writers and important authors that have actually developed the discipline of culture studies. So this is a very important reference book, a very important reference book for culture studies. So if one starts with these two books, the introductory books, and then very enthusiastically and in a concentrative manner reads these two books, a person should definitely be ready for answering, is definitely well prepared for answering questions on cultural studies. So these four books will more or less suffice for you. Now after that, we have Unit 8, that is literary criticism. There is not much to say about it, as it was said earlier, that literary criticism deals more or less with with classical criticism from Plato, Longinus, Horace, Aristotle, coming to the Renaissance, to Philip Sidney, Dryden, Pope, neoclassical criticism, to romantic criticism like Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats for his letters. Also has some influences of Schiller and Berkeley, and Descartes, and Enlightenment issues like Rene Descartes, the ideas of criticism, and comes to full circle with Matthew Arnold, and then T.S. Eliot, Walter Pater, I.F.R. Lewis, and I.A. Richards. So these are some of the important writers that you need to read. And these two books, An Introduction to English Criticism by B. Prasad and M.S. Nakarajan's English Literary Criticism and Theory, will help you to understand how these criticisms actually developed and how they are necessary in interpreting literature or appreciating literary works. So these two books will help you with that. Apart from that, a very exhaustive, very big book is M.A.R. Habib's History of Literary Criticism, from Plato, as it says, from Plato to present. In this book, you will get detailed ideas about what Plato writes, what are his works, what have been written in these works, as well as a criticism and analysis of those works from Plato to the present. So, if you want to start easily, go to either one of these two books, the other Prasad's book or Nagarajan's book, and then when you try to read a little more exhaustively, you should go to M.A.R. Habib's book. Furthermore, M.A.R. Habib's book also helps uh, initially helps in understanding literary theory, but its section on literary theory is a bit more dated, a bit outdated. So, but still, it is a good reference book. You can also use this book for literary theory. Now, after that, you'll need to go to Unit 9, which also will, which in here will be suggesting you four books. So for a so you know that literary theory is quite tough to understand, and it is a person who is not acquainted with the subject will face such certain hurdles and certain hiccups in order to understand the subject, in order to deal with the theory. So, in order to understand the theory with good examples and instances and case studies, one should read these two books. The first book is called Beginning Theory by Peter Barry, and the second one, which is a very underrated book, we don't know why this book is not publicized more, but this is a very, very well written book called Critical Theory Today, a user-friendly guide by Lois Tyson. These two books gives us case studies and examples while dealing with the important theories. If one goes through these two books, one will understand how the theories work, how the theories have been written, and how we can utilize these theories in literary interpretation as well as our everyday life. So these two books are must for understanding the idea of theory. But as you can see, as you know that in UGC NET and JRF examination, only knowing the concept of literary theory is not enough. You have to also know the various developments, the various influences, the various names and various works of literary theory as well. So for these two things, we are suggesting these two very up-to-date books. One is called A Reader's Guide to Contemporary Literary Theory, written by Raman Selden, Williamson, and Brooker, and the other one is Contemporary Literary and Cultural Theory by Pramod K. Nair. These two books are the most up-to-date books that can be found on the market about literary theory. These two books deal with all the aspects of literary theory, their conceptual idea of literary works, literary theoretical works, the theories that have been done, the different positions of theory that have been written, when they were written, the works that are seminal to literary theory, who have written them, what are the important points of these writings, everything in detail can be found in these two books. So in order to get a up-to-date consolidated idea of literary theory, one should go for these two books. And if one can read all the four books with concentration and with devotion, one will be ready to answer the questions from literary theory. And now, finally, we come to Unit 10, that is literary research, methods, materials, and tools. So, in this unit, we have actually four books to suggest to you, but first we'll deal with these three books. So, the first book is The Art of Literary Research by Altic. The second one is The Handbook to Literary Research by Souza Correa and Owens. And finally, Research Methods for English Studies by Gabriel Griffin. All the three books are more or less the same. They deal with various essays and articles about the methods for literary research, the tools that a literary researcher must use, the the techniques in which a researcher should do literary research, how literary research differentiates from other forms, other disciplinary research, and so on and so on. So the contents of all the three books are the same. They deal with particular case studies, particular examples, and many different types of tools. There are discussions on many types of different tools and various types of research methods are given in these three books. So uh, yes, you have to actually read these three books in order to understand what are the differences in these three books. But still, but in an overall outlookish manner, you can say that these three books are more or less the same. Just the differences in the matter of speaking and the matter of writing and how things are approached. The approach is also very similar with a little bit tweak here and there. So these are the three books that you can read. Any one of them will suffice. So, and if you want a personal opinion, we will say here in the English Tutor channel, I will say that go for these two books, Gabriel Griffin's book and Susan Korea and Owen's book, because Altic's book is a bit outdated compared to the two. So go for these two books. And apart from that, you should also read the MLA handbook, especially the 8th edition and the newly released 9th edition. Because in India, most of the literary research that is is done by following the MLA handbook, the instructions and rules that are given in the MLA handbook. The ideas of citations, how in in-text citation and endnote citation should be given, how pagination should be done, all the important things. So apart from these two books, one should also read the MLA handbook, particularly the 8th edition and also the newly released 9th edition. And if so, thank you for listening to this video. And if you can, take some time, take a lot of time, and if you do read all these books, or at least go through these few books, we here think that they, they will suffice for you and will help you achieve what you wanted to achieve all along. So with that, we'll close the video today, and all the best to you, and we'll meet you in the next video. So till then, thank you, and do like, share and subscribe to the channel.